So welcome everyone to another Incarnate live stream. We are doing my favorite series, the Remake My Map. We're going to do Typher Zero's map titled Aristos Dwell. It's pretty awesome. I went ahead and took some notes on what the backstory is on this. We're going to use these notes. It's a hideout for a gnome artificer faction where they use unknown technologies. There's no vegetation on the original map, and it's within a pocket dimension from what I can tell. And then I think because it's a gnome civilization that's involved in this, what we could do is use the new dwarven packs, because I think that will work well with the gnome theme. So let's just jump right into it. I'll go ahead and remove the title here. What I'll end up doing first is I want to make a couple layers to get myself started. I usually always build from the ground up. Because it's a floating island, what we really mean is the bottom of the island to the top of the island. So what I'll do is I'll rename this layer, object layer. I'm going to call it terrain. You could also call it floating isle or whatever you want, but this is the specific object layer in which we're going to build the terrain, and then we'll build the settlement on top of that. So what my recommendation is go over to the line tool. Make sure that you select the pen right here. You're going to switch over to a texture stroke of some kind. We'll open up the catalog, and we'll type in cliff because there should be some options here. And if you don't like those cliff options, there's also hill as well. Let me go type in hill. There's also these right here. Now in the thumbnail, I used this wide red sand hill. I think that's not a bad idea. If we're going to have the ground be water and land, that's going to be a lot of cooler colors like greens, blues. So why don't we use an orange color to represent a warmer color? And this should help to distinguish the ground from something higher up in the air. So we're going to use contrast, cools and warms, to determine the ground from the floating island. I think that will be quite helpful. So we'll go ahead and use this one right here. And I'm just going to build straightly from the ground up. I'll go to the original here and just kind of look at it. You'll notice that there is one major island right here, and there's a smaller one right here. We don't have to follow this exactly, but we'll stick with a similar design. Hey, Swedish Freezer, glad that you're here. All right, we'll go ahead and hide that title. Now, whenever you're kind of putting together a landmass shape, this also applies if you're making like a hill or a mountain with the battle map styles. What I'll do is I'll use the pen like this. And just kind of a heads up, if you want more curves, what you need to do is add more nodes. That's the secret. The more nodes there is, the more curves. Notice how less nodes means a straighter line. So a nice little trick for creating a natural land formation or a hill or a mountain, whatever, with the city style or whatever the styles, is to kind of use many nodes to create lots and lots of different curves in your shape, because natural formations don't have a lot of straight lines. There's a lot of curves to it. Some natural formations do have. I think I've seen some basalt pillars, basalt rock. I think I've seen some pretty straight, pretty ethereal, very out of this world looking things. But for the most part in nature, we're going to go with something a little bit more natural looking. So I'll kind of create the basic shape here. You're just going to go ahead and press enter. Just go add, and it should place that there. So we have the general shape. If you look carefully here at the title, it's similar shape, not quite as wide. That's okay. And then next you're going to choose a fill. And I would recommend using the clip mask. And the clip mask is going to pick up whatever's on this brush layer called land. Okay. So if you want to paint on this layer right here where the clip mask is, you got to switch to land. And let's go ahead and choose just a orange color just to fill for now. We don't have to use this as the end color, but we'll start with that. So this is going to be the main shape of the island. Why don't we also create that little side island that was right about here? You notice that I created a little bit of a curve right here. That's perfect. When we're creating our land formations, we want to have like this Pangea effect. Maybe this smaller island broke off from this bigger island. So let's create that. Oops, I'm using a line tool, by the way, my mistake. There we go. And I'll go in like this. And I'll even kind of follow along the shape of the island like this. Then I can go to add, and then I have that little island. I can kind of rotate it. Maybe it looks better like this. Maybe it looks better like this. It's really up to you which one you think looks better. I think it's a sky island. I don't think it's a side. It is in a pocket universe, from what I'm hearing from Typher Zero's description. So I think I'm not sure which one I like best. I think this one does kind of look a little bit more interesting. I kind of like that shape, so that looks good. Once you've kind of done those two, what I would recommend is just kind of lock the both of them. The way that you lock something is you just select it in the catalog or in the right layer panel here, or you can just select it right off the screen. There's an Alt key, and if you press Alt L, it will automatically lock that. Notice how there's a lock right here. This is going to make sure that I don't accidentally select that. So that's perfect. Now, here comes the fun part. Now, once you start building the island, obviously an island is a sky island is just going to be all the way flat. It's probably going to have similar things that are on land on the ground. Like there's probably going to be multiple depth and elevation changes, pitches in the elevation. All of that stuff's going to change. So how is it we give it that natural look? We're going to go ahead and go back to the shape tool. We're going to choose the same stroke and fill. This time we're going to go up one layer. And the trick to creating a natural looking elevation changes is to not retake the whole shape and then just have it be like a pyramid. Let me show you an example. So like, see this shape right here? The trick is not to copy and paste the shape and then put another one on top like that, and then copy and paste the shape and then do it again like that. That's going to look too procedural. What you want to do is to do something like this. Take that same shape. I'll start right here like this, and I'll just kind of, I won't cover the entire shape of the base part of the island, but I will create another section of the island. I'll still stay close like this to the edge, but I can decide to deviate away from the edge at any time, creating these interesting, more natural elevation changes. So I'll go like this, just follow this along here. There we go. I'll just go ahead and press enter. There's the next one right here like this. So that now you have another shape right here. We can always change the scale a little bit, make it a little bit bigger too. We don't have to have it be perfectly lined up against edge. Maybe it goes a little bit this way. Maybe it goes a little bit this way. That's really up to you. You can always rotate it as well to move things around. In fact, I kind of want to change one of the nodes on this one right here. See a little bit of a straight line right here. So why don't I go ahead and just take these nodes and kind of move them around a little bit. There we go. That will fit a little bit better. There we go. And then what I think I'll also do is I'll change the scale a little bit on the size. There we go. So now you have a second layer. So obviously this is going to be a higher elevation than that bottom part right here. Then from there, do the same thing. Alt L, lock it, and then go ahead and make the next one. Go back to your shape, use the pen, go up another sub layer. Remember, this is on sub layer. Oh, looks like that's on sub layer 0. Go ahead and take this one and put it up one layer, but I think it's actually okay. We'll just take it, as long as it's one layer up, should be okay. There we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slowly create an elevation change. It's going to creep over to the right upper part of the map. So I've done this part. I'm just going to follow that same method. What I'll do here is I'll go like this and put another section like this. Remember, notice how I'm not covering the entire thing. I'm just creating another space. And in fact, I'll even deviate a little bit from the edge and then create a space that goes all the way this way. It's getting a little tight in there. So I think what I'll do is also have it stop there as well. And then just go add again. And then you have another elevation change that you want. So that looks good. And then I'll just do one more elevation change, just one more to show the highest point on the floating island. And that can be where maybe this Aristos artificer faction, where their main fortress is, or whatever it might be, a palace, a stronghold, whatever it might be. So let's just make one more. Actually, I'll make a couple more on the sides too, because multiple elevation changes, or we're going to make it look interesting. Let's just do that last one right here, like this, where I'm going to create this kind of raised up section where probably the main structure will be a fortress, palace, whatever it might be. Just go to add. And then I have that final piece. And what's cool is I can always rotate it. I can move it around. Maybe it looks better over here. Maybe it looks better against right here on this angle. Maybe I like it better right here. Maybe that looks more interesting. Maybe it's better right here. So kind of cool that you can kind of change things, move things around, decide what you think looks best. I think I'm going to go with right here because having it right against the edge here will double up against the cliffs on this side right here. And it will make it look like it's extra high because it has an extra layer of cliff right there, 1 and 2. So that give that extra sense of height. What I'll also do is create a couple more shapes like right over here. See this nice little open space right here? If I bring the scale down a little bit, what I can do is just create another one right here like this. This can work as like a good foundation for like maybe a tower or some kind of outlook position right here. And I can put that right in that corner like that. And what I'll do is I'll push it maybe all the way against the corner right here so that it doubles up on those cliffs, giving it that extra sense of height there. We can even maybe put a bridge that goes from this piece to this piece right here. That might look good. Let's do another piece. Let's do another one right here as well. We'll double up on this edge here because that way we can put a bridge. Oopsie, that's the line tool. We can put a bridge that maybe goes across to here and to here. That might look kind of interesting. So let's do that. Here we go. Create a nice little interesting shape here. Almost looks like a tadpole a little bit, doesn't it? There we go. Go to add. There we go. Looks good. Now you have another piece right here. You can change it, maneuver, change the scale. I think right about there looks pretty good. Works pretty well. We'll take a step back and kind of look at it. Now you can kind of see that you do have this kind of natural formations beginning to form, and then it looks a little bit more interesting. It's a great technique to create natural formations because really what I want to do is I just want to keep copying and pasting pieces, but by creating multiple different jigsaw type shapes on top of each other and leaving some space open, like this open space here, open space here, here, here. It's really going to create this natural like formation. That's going to be important. You can also add great details by just using the line tool. If you wanted to show that there was an extra high cliff here, notice how it doubles up right here. I can do the same thing here. Just go ahead and use the cliff tool or the line tool right here, and then choose a cliff of my choice. And then I can go ahead and just take that cliff and just put it right up against here. I could even take it down a layer if I wanted to. It's up to you. I can undo, actually. Let me go ahead and just take all these. And what I'll do is I'll push this one up a layer, push this one up a layer. This is why I always recommend going up a couple layers. But now I can take this piece right here, and you'll notice that I have this nice extra sense of cliff right here. So it's an extra tall right there. So if you want to show extra elevation change, extra height, just add a little line along the edge of one of the cliffs, one of the faces of the cliffs on your shape, and that will give extra sense of depth. Because what makes a map like this, a city map, battle map, any kind of map really nice is contrasts. And one of the biggest contrasts you're going to have is elevation changes. That's going to be incredibly helpful. Okay. All right. So after we do that, what we'll do next is we'll start painting each layer a different variation of darkness or brightness of the texture that I have, just to denote height. So what I'll end up doing is I'll just take this texture right here. I'll go down to right here, which says tweak colors, and I'm just going to bring it down to a rather dark, we'll say about 60. I'm set to the land brush, and what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and paint. It's a little too dark. Let's go up a little bit more. Let's try 74. We'll go ahead and bring the brightness down a little bit. I'll go ahead and paint this very bottom piece, a darker variation of that orange that we use. So wherever I feel that bottom part is, I'm going to use this orange, darker orange. Same thing here. This seems to be at the same level as that bottom section. Now I can go in, bring the brightness up a little bit more, maybe go to 84, and then maybe paint, even maybe get a little bit brighter than that because it's still not noticeable. How about 88? Let's try that. Yeah, that's noticeable enough. So I'll go ahead and paint in the next one. And you'll notice what I'm doing. I'm using contrast, lights and darks, to create a sense of hierarchy. The hierarchy is simple. Elevation that's down low, like a depth, is going to be darker, while elevation changes that are higher up are going to be lighter. So you're using contrast as a hierarchy to create depth. You'll find that very helpful. So now this one already is set to 100. So what I'll end up doing is I'll just go ahead and bring the brightness up a little bit more above 100, maybe about 115, and I'll go and paint the highest point, this orange right here. Now, when you look at the elevation, look what a simple hierarchy of color did to the build. It created this sense of visual hierarchy of brightness and darkness to create depth. This is the same technique that I use for all of my top-down maps. You'd use those light and dark contrasts to create a hierarchy there. Okay, once we've kind of done that part, I think the majority of the terrain, I think, is kind of done. Some things that we could probably do to make it a little bit better is to maybe just bring the darkness of these stamps at the very bottom just down that a little bit, so that way it kind of matches a little bit. So you'll make these a little bit darker. There we go. And I'll take this bigger one right here, and I'll just bring the brightness up on this one, just to keep with the continuity of brightness. There we go. And now we have a very distinct elevation changes there. Very, very helpful. After you do this part, I would just select it all. You can just lock it if you want. And I would just go ahead and create the next object layer that's going to be on top of this. So I'm going to select terrain specifically, go add layer, add object layer, and we're going to call this structures. And what I normally do first is I start walling in my settlement on, it doesn't matter if it's on top of a hill, a mountain, if it's underwater, if it's in the air. What I'll do is I'll start creating the boundaries in which my settlement are going to exist. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and just wall up every single section on here. And so what I want to do is I'm going to do this other idea of visual hierarchy by saying at the bottom layers here is where the lower workforce is, that kind of maybe mines for the mysterious material that keeps the island afloat. The next layer up could be where residence is. The next layer up could also be where the higher up, maybe like where the foremen live, the people who are in charge. And then this highest layer right here at the very, very top will represent where the fortress is, whatever it might be that we want to put there. So we're going to use that hierarchy. So because this is kind of like, you want to call it slum or a lower class like area, what we'll do is we'll end up using a wall that's not maybe as thick or as powerful as a wall that would be at the top. So we're going to show variation here to make it look like each section is unique. So I'll start with this thin wall first. I'll bring the scale up a little bit. I'm going to use the line tool and just go ahead and go all along the edge like this and go ahead and create the first outer wall for this first layer of your island. So I'll go ahead and put that there. And there's our first little, and you notice that also it's got a bright gray in it. So it really pops out against this darker orange right here. Again, contrasts are important. So kind of keep that in mind. I'll do that same concept. I'll go ahead and create the wall like this, have it go around here like this, all the way around. I am using my mouse and I'm not using a pen. I don't have to put the wall all the way over to here. I'm just going to have it stop to right here. It's just a little too thin to do anything over there. So that first step is done. I've created that wall. I could do the same thing on this side over here on this island. There's not a lot of space, so it's probably not 100% necessary, but I'll put it in there anyway, just for continuity. Since we're already doing it on the main island, we'll do it on the small island as well. There you go. So you have that nice space there. This is next we'll do the wall along this edge, and we'll use a different wall type this time. Let's try maybe using this simple castle wall. Again, we're going to use this to determine that this is a distinct district from the one at the bottom here. So I'll go ahead right here, do that shape, just like I did before. Single click your way with nodes with the line. And you don't have to do the entire side. You can offset a little bit, like you could go like this and have it offset, just like we did with the terrain. I'm going to cover the whole thing because my logic is it's a sky island, so real estate is is rare, right? It's hard to find. You can't just walk off the island, go across the water, and go to another island. So because there's a limited space, we'll follow the logic that every square inch, foot, meter, whatever that's on this island is going to be have to be used. So keep that in mind. That's going to be important. So you're starting to see the visual hierarchy here: a small wall here, medium-sized wall here, and then maybe on these next two layers, we'll create much larger, thicker walls to protect the fortress or whatever that might be there. All right, let's go ahead and start again. We'll go here, we'll switch over. I think the next one we should use is maybe this thicker, massive castle wall. Let's go ahead and use that, and we'll use it for all the remaining layers. In fact, what I'll end up doing is just put this here, right here, like that, so at least it's there in my history. I noticed I missed a spot over here. We're going to put a little bit of wall there because that could make for an interesting little section over there. So why don't I go ahead and create the wall here. There we go. There's our next, oops, wrong one. Switch over, there we go. And then there's also another little settlement piece over here. Oh, oopsie, that's the wrong one. Let's use this one. I want to make sure I stick with my continuity. This is the lower part. Or is it the second part? It's the second part. We can stick with that, my mistake. There we go, that's fine. We'll go here. One more. This is a great little spot to maybe put like, maybe like a little, I don't know, where food might be, or it might be a little spot to put something. I'm not entirely sure, but I think that will look good there. Let me just take a step back and look at it. Yep, so far so good. Let's go continue as we were with the line tool on this one, this next layer here. Start all the way over here and kind of make your way. I'm not going to have it span the entire thing because it's just a very thin spot. So we'll go ahead and go across here like this. Yep, it's a little time consuming, but it always pays off. Here we go, getting there, getting close. One more. There we go, copy paste, there we go. So now I have that. Let's also make sure that the wooden part is on the inside. That's going to be what's called your wall walk. That's where your soldiers who are defending are going to be going on the wall there. Let's go back to terrain. I'm going to go ahead and grab this shape right here. I'm going to copy it, then go back to structures, paste it, change fill, then switch, turn my fill off, and then I can switch, and then all I have to do now is just place this right on top without having to recreate the shape, because all I had to do was just take the same shape, switch the stroke, and bring the scale down a little bit, and now we have that full match. Same thing what I'll do over here. I'll go to this terrain over here. I'll go ahead and grab this small one right here. I'm going to go ahead and copy it, go back to structures, paste, switch back. I think it's going to be this one right here. And then all I have to do is just bring the scale down a little bit and then put it right on top, just like this. And now I have a very clear. Now, when I take a step back, you can see the hierarchy of each area. There's one more. I'll put another one right here as well. But you can kind of see what I did. Each wall is different, representing a type of district and maybe even its importance because of its defensive capabilities. That makes it clear. We're going to do one more, go back to terrain. I'll do the same thing that I did to this piece right here. Copy, go back to structures, paste, there we go. And then I'll just flip right back to there. Scale that down and place it right there. There we go. And now I have all of that complete. All of that is done. It looks good. And I'll go ahead and take these walls. I'm going to bring them up a couple layers. Your walls are generally your tallest. They're going to be pretty tall, so I'll bring them up a couple layers. There we go. And then I'll go ahead and select all, and I'm going to go ahead and lock them. Because some of them are rather large shapes and large lines, I'll accidentally select them without a doubt. So to prevent that, I'll go ahead and lock them right away. Now, once we've made those walls part, we can continue thinking about the defenses for each one of these walls. For instance, wall towers. Now, the way that I'm kind of perceiving how access gets from one part of each tier of this island, I'm going to have it to be where there's no ground access. It's a security measure. To get to each level, you will have to man a very small dirigible or some kind of elevator or something to get to each level. This will ensure security, and that way there's no way to penetrate each level with spies and whatnot. So the only way to access each one of the levels of this fortress is to use a small dirigible of some kind. It'll take you up to the next level, or whatever it might be. I think that will act as a good security measure. So we'll actually just phase out access altogether on the ground levels on how to get to each level, and we'll create some kind of network of docks for each one of these dirigibles and airships to land, okay? So we'll continue with the walls, and I'm not going to put a lot of wall towers along this section right here, or we could, let me just check real quick. I think we could use these simple castle wall segments right here. I think these will work just fine. We'll set it to 100, and you don't have to put a whole lot on them. Remember, I want to emphasize that this is kind of a more slum-like area, so you don't have to invest in a lot of defenses into this bottom part. So we'll go ahead and take this piece. I usually put them on the ends like this, wherever they're connecting to a cliff like this. I'll go ahead and put them right there. That's a good start. Same thing here, put one here. That looks good. Over here, let me see. Nope, over here. Yep, over here. This looks good, okay. Once you finish that part, then I think the other obvious places to put these are going to be spots that look really weird, where it looked odd, like look right here in this corner. That looks really weird. Let's just go ahead and save that and place that there. There's another weird spot right here, so why don't we put it right there? I see another weird spot like right here, so let's put it there. A couple weird ones here, so we'll go ahead and hide those. There we go. Let's keep going. I think right there also looks a little odd, so why don't we fix that one? There we go. We'll go back up here. I think right there looks good. We'll put one there. And I think all the other ones look okay. Let's look here. Ooh, that looks really bizarre. So we'll add that one. Let me see where else. Right here looks good. Okay, looks good. All right. Let's put one more right here. I think that might help. Let's take a step back and look at it. Yep, that's fine. Okay, why don't we go up? Why don't we upgrade, go to the next level? Why don't we use these fortifications, and we'll use the circular fortification right here. Just make sure you turn off your randomized stamp, so that way I always have this one right here. And then just like before, you always place those towers like at the end, so I'll probably put one right there and right there. And then what I can also do is maybe just kind of place them at some important points, like maybe right here, and maybe right either here or here. I think right here will be good. There we go. So now we have some key defenses there. I can just use those exact same towers on the next level too. It's fine. Always start at those corners or those ends right there. That looks good. Same thing here, here. And then I'll go ahead and look. Great. Let's put maybe someone right there. Here's some awkward shapes there. Awkward bend there. Let's put one right here. And then maybe one more right there. And then we'll take a step back and just kind of look where those defenses taken us. Yep, this looks good. Okay. That looks good. That looks good. Okay. All right. All right. Let's take a look here. Oop, is this something I need to delete here in the first time chat here? It might need to be. Okay, let's see here. Let me take a step back. This looks good so far. All right. Okay, I think most of the wall towers, besides maybe just a couple right here, are pretty dang close to done. We'll go and put 3 there. I think that looks good. And I think what I'll do is I'll wait to put any more on this fortress right here, because I might want to create a series of fortified installments all along the wall here, because this is the most fortified position right here. So I'll probably put some interesting things there for that. Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah, let's start on the fortifications part. I'll start at the top, because we're doing fortifications. We'll start at the top part where the fortress is. And what I'll generally do is I'll just use these fortifications right here, where I'm already using the circular ones. We can use these, or we can go into the dwarven and use those. Let me just take a step back. We haven't been using a lot of dwarven stuff. Let's actually use some of the dwarven stuff. I think that'd be a good idea. Just to be clear, let's use this shape right here. Hey, Silverclad, glad that you're here. Let's go into the catalog. We'll type in dwarven. Just want to make sure that I don't step away. I mentioned dwarven, so I want to use those. There we go. Okay, why don't we use the highly fortified wall? Let me go show name so I can get an idea of what we've got here. You've got monument wall, fortification wall, fancy wall. You know, I think this fortification wall right here will work good. I kind of like this wall. Let me just flip and just see. I kind of like it facing that way. I think looks a little better. That looks good. And then why don't I also use that same fortification wall here, like that. Let me flip it facing the right way. There we go. Now we're getting into the more dwarven assets. That looks better. Cool. All right. And then we can also go into the dwarves here. Dwarven. We're going to go to expand all assets and show name so that I can kind of see. There should be fortifications. Right here it says fortification. fortifications. Why don't we use these fortifications? And I'll place a lot of fortified structures along the wall itself. Okay, let's take a look here. Let's use, just going to see whichever one, all the ones we have here. Let's use these ones right here. It is an artificer clan, so I think having fancy kind of fortifications should stick within that artificer kind of feel to it. So I'll start by just creating some fortifications along here. Let me just look at the other ones. We could build upon that one by putting another one right here like this, and then put another one maybe right here like this. This looks good. Why don't we place this one right here? And then what we'll do is we'll go into the larger fortifications here. Let me see if there is a dwarven fortress. Let's see if I can find that. If there's no fortress, that's okay. There are all kinds of things that we can do to make our own. What's great about the stamps with Incarnate is that you don't have to use what stamps are labeled, right? You can take a stamp. This doesn't have to be a fortification. Maybe this is a plinth for a crystal or something like that. So you can kind of go outside of the box, which I think will be very helpful. Let me just go through all of them and just see if there's any good like stamps that would represent like a fortress of some kind, like maybe even like the Fighters Guild might work as a nice one. Merchants Guild, let me look to see. I even want to consider maybe bringing the scale up a little bit on the stamps. So I'll do this, just bring that little slider bar. This will allow me to take a little closer look at each stamp to see which one looks good. This Artisan Guild, I like the scale of this. It doesn't necessarily even 100% kind of look like an Artisan's Guild, but it does have like a fancy like fortress, fancy kind of setup to it. So I think that will look good in here. I'll also go ahead and turn off the, go ahead and go to custom object shadows. And I'm going to go with the black color. In fact, I'll just turn the shadows off for now. We'll come back to shadows later. And I'll go ahead and remove this a little bit. I'll go ahead and put my centerpiece in. I'm going to bring the scale up just a little bit more, just to show that this is a little bit bigger. And then I'll go ahead and place this right against the wall right here. Now that I have that centerpiece, now I can start adding in some fortified sections, maybe alongside it, like this. Let's go ahead and maybe put this one over here like this. Let's take a look here. Let's put one right here on this side, kind of going out right here, a little balcony, kind of looking out. We can even put like an airship dock maybe right there. That might look good. Why don't we also, let's go and delete that. That looks good. Let's go back. Okay, we're going to add just a couple more things in here. This is like the main fortress right here. Then you're also going to expect some form of infrastructure. This is going to be important for every settlement that you have. You always want to have some kind of supporting infrastructure. It doesn't matter if it's a village, a farm, a city, a capital, a town, all requires infrastructure. So if you're kind of confused about what to add in a district or what to add to your city or your settlement, if you start with infrastructure first, then you can build all the residential around those infrastructures. Okay, so it's kind of important. So right here we have the main structure, a fortress. But what about the people who work at the fortress, who protect it? So a couple things that we want to add are going to be things like maybe some housing for soldiery. So why don't we use the occupants themselves? Let's use some fancy ones first. This could represent royalty, people who are important. So we'll go ahead and put some important buildings in first, some fancy blue ones, and then we can go in and add maybe some different kind to show, like maybe some blocks. So we'll put in these blocks right here. I'll put a couple in right here like this. Let's just go scroll through and see which ones fit the best. I think this one probably should fit okay right here. Let's go here. Individual ones might work. So let's go to, let's see, those are fortifications. Let's use these individual smaller ones right here. This should give me room to kind of fit into those spaces here. So I'll go ahead and fit this in. That looks good there. I'll put another one in right there. Another one right there. Okay. So you have, these are going to be like administrative buildings. These are going to be important to making sure that there's a leadership that's kind of helping to make the whole settlement work carefully. They're keeping tally of workers, the product that's being produced, whether it's the crystals for whatever keeps this island afloat. All of those things are going to be necessary. We'll get into roads and all the little details later. What we'll do is we'll start with the smallest section on the island first at the top and move our way down. So this is going to be kind of more of an elite light section. When we start going down, we get into this next level. This might be middle management types. This might be where goods and services are made, like businesses. It could be the mercantile district, whatever it might be. I think mercantile works good. And so we want to add a couple things in here to add to the infrastructure. Before you throw any residential buildings, you should probably throw in things like these buildings right here. Let me see if I can find them. We'll scroll down right here. You have these guilds like alchemists, a university, a library, a mages guild, inns, merchants guilds. All of these things are going to be part of infrastructure. So you always place those first so that way you have your basic infrastructure and then you can build your residential around that. So let's start with the merchants guild. We'll go and put it in this nice little corner right here. I think that looks good. Got to have a merchants guild. We also are probably going to want to add things like maybe a blacksmith of some kind. We can go put that maybe on this side, maybe. So maybe they have to go through, maybe through a little cave right here to go to this side to get to it. So that'll be helpful. We'll have maybe more than one blacksmith. We could put another one right here or put another one over here somewhere. That might not be a bad idea. Let's put it all the way up against here. I think that fits kind of nicely there. Let's keep going over our infrastructure. Let me just scroll up here. There's a brewery, a carpenter. Carpentry is a must. So why don't we put a carpenter in there? We also want to maybe look for a stone mason. All of that infrastructure stuff is going to be important. Here's a mason right here. That's perfect. Why don't we put that in there as well? We'll put the mason there. We'll push this one a little further this way. Put that one there, that one there. In fact, I'll go ahead and push these down a layer. There we go. These should all go down a layer. There we go. This should go down a layer. There we go. Okay. Let me just keep checking more and more of that infrastructure. Let's see here. There should be a couple more. There's a fighters guild. I don't see that as necessary for the floating island that we're doing. I'm going to try to grab all the ones that I think would be most necessary. I think a rune work makes a lot of sense considering that, there might be crystals being used. And so those runes are necessary for making the island float. So I'll go ahead and put this larger one, put it right in here like this. That fits, and I'll take this smaller one right here. And it will probably fit better over here. So we're slowly getting all of our basic infrastructure. When you feel that you have enough of your infrastructure, see how we're running out of room, then we can go in and start filling in that with our building. So I can go in and put a building right here. If you start running out of space, use those smaller ones again. So I'll go ahead and use these smaller ones, fill in those spaces like this. I think that looks good right there. We'll put another one right here. I think that fits well. Right about there looks good. Let's use another one. Let's try that one. And sometimes it's nice to use repeating stamps because it shows that it might be part of a larger complex. So just kind of keep that in mind. I think that looks good. Why don't we add one more? I think let's put another one right there like that. There we go. So there's enough room, and then we'll add a couple in here as well. One there. And the rest, I think I can use shacks and things like that to fill in those spaces. So I think that this level right here is where the basic infrastructure and the those kind of infrastructure is at. We'll also put in some infrastructure on this layer as well because we weren't able to fit it all in. But we'll go ahead and put a couple key important structures in here. So we'll go back to our infrastructure. We'll put in a couple more of those, and then we'll go down to the main bulk of the residence. So what I would start with is maybe grabbing a jeweler. We can do that. I like that purple color. I think that looks good. We'll throw that in there. Let's keep going, looking more and more infrastructure stuff. There's an herbalist. I don't see any vegetation, so I don't really think it makes a lot of sense to have an herbalist, or maybe it's more important to have one because it's not on land. So maybe we'll add an herbalist in there. I'll separate them so there's space. And then I'll also go in here and look for just maybe one or two more. I think, let's take a look here. I think leatherworks makes sense. So why don't we add a leather worker? I think that's a good choice, but I'll move it way over to here. And I think it fits kind of nicely, like just right there, like that. That looks good. Couple more, I think one more, and then we'll be ready to start putting the bulk of the residential in. We're moving right along here. 43, it's probably going to be a 2-hour episode, to be clear, because, you know, unfortunately, any settlement, village or otherwise, and bigger, it's just a very time-consuming thing, and that's not a big problem. It's not a big deal. You know, if you want a good map, you're just going to have to put a little bit more time into it. Let's see, let's add an artisans guild, and then we'll call it good. Right here, I'll put an artisan guild. See, it kind of fits nicely just right there in that section right there. That looks good. And then from there, I can go in and just fill in now with a bunch of buildings. And I'll just go ahead and use these same ones right here for now, because once we start getting down to here, we'll get into the more mining, the more shanty sections down there. So I'll start by just kind of placing these like this. You're just going to rotate them until they kind of fit in the right place. I think that looks okay like that. This looks good. And you're worried about roads? Don't worry, we will get to that. First, we got to start with the basics, just putting our blocks together, and then we'll connect everything. That looks good. Let me put, can I fit a little one in here? Ooh, a little tight. Let's go and use the individual ones then. We'll go in here. I think that looks good there. One there. Here. 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 That looks good. That looks good. There we go. Okay. So now you have that part done. Now we'll get to that last part where this is going to be mostly the mining space. So we want to maybe put, I saw a big mason piece right here. We'll use this as the centerpiece, this giant mason thing right here. I think that looks good. And what we could do also is like place that right here along this cliff right here. So it's got some elevation there, or we can create a little bridge that goes from here to here. I think what I want to do is I didn't mention any land connections. So what I'll do is I'll just place it along here like this. This looks good. Now you have that whole facility right there. And then what I'll also do is maybe grab something like this Thieves Guild right here. I can maybe place that maybe over here. Maybe it's not even a Thieves Guild. Maybe it's just a part of the mining. Like these holes are the ones that the workers climb down into to get to mine the necessary ore. So why don't we put 3 of those? These are going to be where the workers go get the materials. And then we'll also just put a series of like shanties, towns just all around those. So let's go ahead and look around here. I think these are, shack. I think these will probably work the best. So we'll go ahead and use these shacks right here. I'm going to set to random. And then what I'll do is I'll just kind of create a whole bunch of shacks like this. You can go and just kind of group them real close together. It's okay if some of them are like brushing up against each other. If it's a shanty town, then you would kind of expect things, you know, like a slumlord tries to fit as many tenants into a building as possible to maximize how much they're getting out of them. So to kind of show that dynamic, we'll really just kind of piece these together. We'll make little districts, like maybe they'll have one little district here that's around this one, and then I'll go ahead and create another series of buildings that go around the other one. I'm just going to use these little shacks. It's a little more time consuming because I'm doing individual ones. I don't see any big globs of shacks that we can use. Let me just see if there is a block of shacks. I don't see any, but I'll just verify that real quick. Yeah, there's no blobs of shacks here, so we're just going to have to use this. So we'll go ahead and place that here. Again, don't worry if it's a little cramped. That's okay. There we go. And I'll just leave that alone for now, make that one little section. We can put something in that negative space there. So let's do the next thing. Next one, same thing here. I'm just going to put shacks all around this. They're mining that important material that kind of keeps the island floating. I was thinking we'd use some crystals. I think that would make it a little bit more interesting. You could do that too. We could try it. Let's try it out real quick. I generally don't use the area one, but you could use this. If you're going to do that, then just bring the density down like this. You can bring that density down. It's okay if they overlap a little bit, but not too much. And then you could just do this, just place a bunch like this. I mean, it does actually kind of work, but again, you'll have to, when it comes to little tight spaces like this, you'll have to go in with individually, but I'll go ahead and start this now just to get it going. Great suggestion, Typher, appreciate it. They're all kind of facing the same kind of way a little bit. I probably should have set to random, but it's okay. I'll just go ahead and rotate these a little bit, making sure they're kind of facing all in the right way a little bit. That's why I like doing them individually. I just have a heck of a lot more control. But if you want to, if you have a lot, like if you have a huge district of shacks, I mean massive, this is kind of small, really, when it comes to districts. It's not very big, but on a massive city, that would probably really help you using that tool. But I generally only use it for that purpose. I wouldn't use it for a small district because, again, you just don't have the same control that you have. See how all of the shacks are kind of facing the same direction, they'll have the same rotation and stuff. You don't have that control. So I usually just end up not using it for these little small sections like this. But if your whole map, if you had a huge section that was like this big and you have a tiny scale stamp, oh yeah, absolutely use the area tool. That will be absolutely helpful. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and go back to the default here. I'll have individual control again, and then I can go in and individually place them in. It really doesn't really matter if you prefer to, use the area brush and you don't mind some of the settings, that works fine. Okay, I think what I'll do is just kind of fill in the last bit of spaces here. Let's move this one over to here, move this one over to here. There we go, that looks good. Okay, now I have some open space right here on this side, so I can go in and maybe throw in a couple important things, like maybe I can throw in maybe just a couple of these smaller buildings like this, just to show like a transition as I'm moving from left to right to the upper levels. So maybe there's just maybe a little tiny little spot right here where there's just a couple buildings that are not shacks. I think that's going to be kind of important. That will help to kind of make the district look a little bit more interesting. So it's not all the exact same type of building, but it does set up nicely there. I think that looks nice. Adding in those pieces, we'll add just a couple more little tiny buildings in here, and then we'll jump back to those shacks to fill in the rest of the space. I would add like parks and things normally if it was a regular like settlement, but because this is like a floating island, it's more of a fortress instead of like a retreat for like a luxury getaway. So I'm not going to put anything like forests or any kind of major vegetation. It seems like that's not the point of this settlement. The point of this settlement is to protect probably trade secrets for the artificer faction. It is in a pocket dimension, so secrecy is obviously very important to this build. So we got that. We'll take a step back here. 50. We still got a lot done in just under an hour. That's really quite impressive here. Have we covered what they eat? Well, considering that it's a artificer's hideout and it's in a pocket dimension, I'm sure they can get food in any other pocket dimension that they wanted to, because magic. It's always the logic, magic. If they have the ability to hide an entire Sky Island fortress within a pocket dimension, they probably have the ability to store food in pocket dimensions as well. So just use that same logic. We don't even need, oh, that's okay. I know if you just got here, it's all right. No worries about that. I'm not trying to school you or anything, but we'll just use that same logic. I mean, if you really wanted to show some kind of food infrastructure, then I would, we're going to add a ton of floating airships. So it's possible that a lot of food is transported on airship. It's in a pocket dimension. The airship goes in that dimension, harvests the food, comes back, and then loads whatever product or food off the airships onto the island here. That would be my guess. So we are going to throw in a lot of like docks coming off of the walls, coming off of areas, so that way we can kind of show that this island has a lot of airships involved, because you're going to need all the airships for access to get to each level of the island. You're going to need it to leave the island. You're going to need it to go harvest food. So airships are going to play a huge role, because again, a floating island is isolated. Obviously a sailing ship can't get there. Ox and cart walking won't get there. The only access is a airship. So we're going to want to make sure we create plenty of infrastructure on the build to support the airships. And since we're talking about that, why don't we do that here? What I wanted to do was to maybe have maybe a big tower right here of some kind. Maybe this is like the major floating island's tower. Maybe it's a lighthouse of some kind, whatever it might be. Maybe it's a watchtower. Maybe it's the dungeon for people because it's isolated from the rest of the island. Why don't we make it like a Tower of London situation where it's a big tower where prisoners kind of go. It's isolated. Makes sense, right? So why don't we do that? Prison? Yeah, love it. Great call, Typher. It is your build, so I don't mind taking your suggestions. Feel free to shoot them in there. Let's just go ahead and look at our options here, what we got. Let's see here. I'm just going to see what kind of options we have for a tower here. Let's see here. Not really seeing a whole lot of options here, but you know what's really cool? You can make your own buildings, and I'll show you how to do that. You'll like this quite a bit. Pretty cool. So to make your own building is pretty simple. You don't see a tower specifically that you like, that you want to have, that you don't see it. Go ahead and use a wall type from the style or from the pack that you want. Why don't we use maybe this? Let me just take a look here. Why don't we use this stone bridge wall right here? We'll use that as the wall shape. So there's the wall right there. I'll go ahead and choose a fill. Again, choose a fill shape or a color or texture that is within maybe the dwarven set here. And I can kind of look at my options here. I like that stone there. There's just this yellowish kind of ground color, dirt. We could use that. There we go. Now you notice that I have kind of this like tower here. And then of course I can always just add details on top of it to make it look interesting. For instance, maybe I want to add some kind of fortification along it. Like I'll put maybe that fortification on top. It contrasts because it's a square while there's a circle underneath of it. There's some nice contrasts. Why don't I also add another segment, like maybe have a part of the building kind of pop out a little bit. So I'm breaking up even more of the symmetry, right? Now I have both a piece that moves off to the side. It breaks up the perfect symmetry. That looks good. I'll go ahead and just create a group and call it prison. I can add more details to it later. And I'll just go ahead and move this prison piece. Let's go up several layers where I want it to. I'll go ahead and remove these. And then I'll go ahead and just create a, go ahead and bring size down here. And I'll just create this nice little prison right here, and that will keep people who cause trouble over here in the slums or whatever reason, they're going to be transported over there. So we'll have an airship that will probably transport prisoners over to here, and then this little space right here can represent a yard in which prisoners come out and they're allowed to get some air or whatever. So this will be the prison yard while this will be the prison itself. So I think that's a good choice. And then what we'll also do is we want to maybe finish up the last bits. Like there's nothing in here and there's nothing over here. So why don't we add some stuff? So maybe I'll use, just like before, you're going to want some basic infrastructure here. So who works in that forge right there? Maybe that's where the blacksmith lives. Hold on one moment. My goodness. Why don't we, maybe what about other workers that work at that furnace? Some more workers that work at the furnace, maybe servants that help to keep things clean or operate machinery, whatever it might be, right? So we have all of those there. That looks good. I'll go ahead and put maybe a guardhouse with a tower maybe right here in this corner. So that way people can watch people in the yard. I think that looks good. We'll add in maybe a couple things over on this side over here. Why don't we actually put a private little dock or a little spot in here. This could be like a private vein that belongs to, like, this is where maybe the most valuable ore or mineral comes from. So we'll have a private one right there. I think that looks good. Okay, so now that we've finished, I think, oh, we have one more. Let's do this right here. My mistake. One more. Let's do that. Let's see what our options is here. Why don't we use, I don't mind using a Mage Guild, Merchant, Artisan. We have those already. What about an Adventurer's Guild? I don't think that's a bad idea. I'm not sure. It's not really going to be an Adventurer's Guild. In the end, it'll probably be something else. But I'll go ahead and just put that in there. Actually, no, I don't really like that. I think I'll do this instead. I'll throw in just the basic buildings. Just for the infrastructure, so like everything else. There we go. Let's take a step back and look at it. Okay. Now, I want to step away from this one step of where I'm going to continuously adding stamps. So what I'll do is I'll get the roads in now so that the people have to leave later they'll be able to catch that. So I'll start showing you how I approach roads real quick, and then we'll go on to the many, many dock yards that are going to be required to maintain and do all of the ships that are going to be coming, going from this space. So what we'll end up doing is we're going to go ahead and pick a texture. My recommendation is to usually choose a lighter texture to represent your roads. And the reason why is because it's going to pop out quite a bit. It's going to pop out quite a bit. And I would recommend maybe using one of this one right here. Let's try this flagstone road. We can even use the smaller one, the cobbles right here. Let's try that. What I'll end up doing is maybe bringing the brightness up on that. Let me just go ahead and apply it real quick and just see what it looks like. You know, I think that looks good. Let me see what happens if I desaturate it and just make it white. I'm kind of curious if that will make any bit of a difference. So I'll desaturate real quick. You know, I think I like the white better because it just pops out more. So what we'll end up doing now, this is pretty easy stuff, is just go ahead and fill in the areas that are negative space. And you can go ahead and just kind of create this kind of walk that goes through here. So you have that first part. What about the road that goes this way and then goes this way to here? That looks good. What about a road that goes into here and right here, right? So what you're doing is you're just kind of filling in the spaces and just kind of doing all the negative space. And you don't have to do every single negative space. Like some can just have a little back road like this. It doesn't connect all the way. Maybe some of the stone has kind of fallen apart. So you don't have to do every little section. Just throw in here and there. And then don't be afraid to also like do an entire section. Just maybe create like a little fully paved section of the road right there. Same thing here. Maybe why don't I just pave this whole section right here with that part of the road? So you're seeing how roads kind of come together. Place your stamps first, and then you can start building your roads in the negative spaces. So same thing here. I'll go ahead and just kind of use this right here like this. We'll create a main route that kind of goes through here to here. Same thing here. I'll have it go to here. Why don't we fill in that entire space with that stone here, here, go this way. This looks good. That looks good. And then we're almost done with that part of the road. That looks good. Same thing here. We'll go here. We'll create the main route, have it kind of loop around this building and go this way. Same thing here. There you go. Looks good. Same thing here. I'll go ahead and create the little routes. Kind of lead through here. Same thing here. Some road in here. And here as well. There we go. Okay. Let's keep doing a couple more road. We'll go here in the shanty town. Now, because this is kind of a shanty, what I'll end up doing is that I'm just going to have one main road that is going through the whole thing, and then the rest is just kind of dirt. And what this will do is, what I want to do is maybe connect each one of these pits right here with a road. Like this, we'll connect the pits, and then the rest can just be dirt ground, just so that you kind of show that, hey, it obviously doesn't have the same level of infrastructure that these upper levels do. Same thing here. I'll probably just pave a little bit of the yard. And I'll pave a little bit here as well in this section here. So now we have all of that kind of put together. So I think those look good for our roads. So from here, we can start messing on with the next part, which is we want to add all of our airship docks and stuff. That, remember, the whole thing is accessible through airships only. So what we'll end up doing is we'll use the line tool. We'll open up the catalog, and you'll notice that there's something called scaffolding right here. This scaffolding is going to work perfect. And what I would do is I would add scaffolding along some key important spots. For instance, like we want to have some scaffolding along this prison right here because we want to create a way for prisoners to be filed in and loaded into the prison. So we'll put a little bit of scaffolding right there. 125 is probably a little big. I'll just create one part of the scaffolding, and I'll maybe just put it right up against the wall right here like that. And then what I'll also do is just create a little bit of some airship docks just kind of going off to the edge right here like this. And then we can also put some maybe right here on this side as well. And then I'll go ahead and create some docks that go off. And I'm going to have them overlap so they go over the island. So that way it just kind of creates a little bit more interesting, unique shape. So now we have some access. We're going to copy and paste some airships that I made by piecing together a bunch of stamps. So I'll show you where those are and how to put those together. But now we have these nice spots. We can put all these airships all along these docks here. Let's do the same thing here. Let's start with this section over here. I'll put like a little bit of a dock, some scaffolding or docking right here, all along here. That looks good. And then I can even overlap and have it go over like this. So it kind of looks like it's just right on top of the buildings like this. So maybe there's even some poles on the ground holding up those. So that's not a bad idea. We can get a little extra sense of depth by adding that. Why don't we add a little bit here too? Let's put some right here like this. Like that. I'll put that right across like this. Now we have some dock there. What about here as well? I think all along this edge is a good choice. And then what I'll do is I'll have a little bit of dock that goes up into here like this, like that. And then I'll go ahead and just take that exact same dock piece, copy and paste it, and just have it going copy and paste all along here like this. So now I have those nice airship docks right along there. Same thing here. I see that there's a little bit of a section right here. So why don't we put an airship dock all along here like this. And just like before, I'll just copy and paste those little pieces that I made like this, so that that way I don't have to just keep making a new line or shape. Very, very helpful. Let's take a step back. Okay, let's look good here. Let's take a step back. Looks good. I think we need to add a lot more along here, here, and all along here, or where we need to add more docks. So let's do that. We'll start right here. I'll put it all the way along against here like this. All along this edge here. That looks good. And then I'll just, again, copy and paste those pieces that I just had. Just like this. Copy, paste. Very clear, obvious. Same thing here. I'll add more here. Airship docks all along here. Then copy and paste all of those pieces. It's okay if it overhangs, it's on top of a building. That's fine, because this will give it an extra sense of depth. Perhaps these are suspended by ropes, chains, magic, poles on the ground that hold the thing up. All of those things can be helpful. Okay, we're getting close. All we really have left now is a couple more things. We need to finish all the airship infrastructure. We need to add the airships, and we need to, I'll show you how to make an interesting ground layer beneath, so that that way it kind of looks like you're floating. Right now, it just kind of looks like an island in shallow water, because there's nothing to determine depth. Like there's no trees, clouds above or below. So right now it seems flat. So after we add in the rest of these docks, I'll kind of show you how I would go about dealing with making something underneath, and it will deviate a little bit from the island too, so that way you have something different to watch and to check out. So I think that looks good. I think there's a couple bare spots that I want to add a couple more. Like I think we should put some docks right here. I think that would be just a nice choice. Copy paste. That way we have lots and lots of areas for the airships. And what I'll also do is I think I'm going to use this set right here. Let's go to copy paste this. And I did see some like pieces like this right here, and it wouldn't hurt to like maybe put like one like right here like that, put another one right here. Oopsie, let's go turn that off like this. Put another one right here like this. That looks good. Put another one right here, kind of like that. And then let me see if there's any other ones. I think right here might be a good choice. Right in there in that little cubby hole. A couple good ones right here. Put one in this little cubby hole here. I think here. I'll go ahead and flip it real quick. There we go. All right, now you have to, well, I don't really care for that. We'll go ahead and remove that. Let's put it right here, and then I'll put this dock right here somewhere else. We'll just remove that. There we go. Let's take a look. Okay, we'll take a step back. All right, so once you notice that we've got a lot done here, we're still going to have to add light sources and do shadowing. So there's still probably another solid hour left. I know none of you mind that it takes a little bit longer, but I think we've kind of gotten to where we can get to the next phase, where how is it that I get to showing that this is a floating island. And so what I'll end up doing is I'll select my land brush layer. I'm going to add another layer. I'm going to call it object layer. I'm going to rename it and call it ground. So now I have this ground layer right here. That's perfect. What I'll do is I'll go ahead and choose a darker color ocean. And then I'll just go ahead and choose water brush and go fill. So I'll have this nice dark color here. That'll be step one. And then the next step, what I'll do is I'm going to create a series of land. Now, it is a pocket dimension, so we could have an eerie, weird, like texture to represent the background because it might be some weird pocket dimension. But because it is a floating island, it's going to be harder to determine like that it's a floating island unless we add some kind of environment on the ground. So I'll start with using my edgy brush of my land tool, roughness 3, no smooth. Go ahead and turn that off. And what I would recommend doing is just go ahead and create some land on the ground like this. So I got a little bit of land right here. I'll put a little bit of land right here like this. I'll put a little bit of land over here like this. Let's put a land underneath so that it seems very clear that there's kind of land there. So if we've got these little pieces of land underneath, that's going to be helpful. Why don't we go with an entirely different color scheme? So we'll maybe use like a green color, and we'll use that instead of our orange. So that way it'll really determine like, oh, that is, why don't we use a darker green? Let's use that one. And in fact, why don't we use a green with some artifacts? See this simple grass, it's got some artifacts in it. Why don't we use that? There we go. And I'm just going to go ahead and paint in all these sections with that nice green. This should help to determine top from bottom. The ground level has the grass land, while the top level where the island is has this orange land. That should help. So that's a good step. Make sure you get that all in there. That looks good. This one here. There we go. That looks good. Just be careful because the land is also the same layer that the clip mask is on. So just kind of be careful when you're doing that. So there's that. I'm going to go in back to my land tool. I'm just going to bring the brush size down and just kind of refine. I'm going to go ahead and refine a little bit more of my coastlines here. It doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to use a blur filter shortly. So we'll just go ahead and put a little bit here, a little bit here. There we go. This looks good. Make sure I paint. There we go. That looks good. Okay. From here, what I'll do is I'll start putting some vegetation down of some kind, like some trees. That should help to make it clear that there's like this ground here. And what I would do is all of my stamps on this island right here are about 100 or higher, okay? 100% scale. So if I go ahead and just bring these down like this, excuse me, I'll go ahead and bring these scales down. So it has to be noticeably smaller. See, this is at 30, that's at 100. It has to be noticeably smaller. So if you wanted to show that the skyline is way, way high up, then you would bring the size of the stamps way, way down. If you wanted to show that the island was only maybe several hundred feet above ground, then you would bring the stamps up a little bit bigger. So it's really up to you. This is where what you're doing is you're kind of creating forced perspective by using scale differential. Large stamps are higher up, further down means smaller stamps. So I'll stick with this like maybe 25 scale. I think that's a good size. And I'll do what Typher Zero mentioned earlier. I'll go ahead and use an area brush. And then I can just go in and kind of just paint in a little bit of my forests and big globs like this. And then I'll go ahead and bring my area a little bit smaller there. And then I can go in and just kind of create a couple here, a couple clicks here. And then this way I have some varying islands here. And it's on the ground layer. So when I place a tree underneath, notice how it goes underneath the island because it's on a separate layer called ground beneath. So that's going to be super important. I'll go ahead and put that down, put a little bit here, here, here. That looks good. Why don't we put some here so it looks like it's clearly underneath the island. Put a couple individual pieces here. Why don't we turn off area? And then I'll go and just add some individual trees. Yeah, I think that scale looks good. What is it at? 25? Yeah, that's perfect. That looks good. Here, this looks good. And I'll grab some individual trees as well. These ones right here. These will work good. Always good to throw in just individual trees. That will kind of help. There we go. And then the last bit for these islands that I'll do before I add anything else is I'll go ahead and throw in a little bit of shoreline because you want to show that you do want to show that these are like islands on the water. So go ahead and use like a sand texture of some kind, whatever it might be, bring the opacity down a little bit, and then just all along these land brush, along these edges here, just kind of throw in a little bit of a coastline, like this. A little bit of a coastline. This will help to make it clear that these are islands on the sea, and then that way it'll help to determine that they're natural, that they're not other floating islands. So just put a little bit of here. So now it makes it very clear that we have land beneath. That will be helpful. And then what we'll also do is we'll do a little bit of water painting. I'll take that same blue, bring that brightness down, make sure it's set to water brush. And I always use the same brushes for water. So I'll use what's called a cloudy brush. I believe that's the cloudy brush right there. Bring that opacity down, and with the deeper parts of the ocean are going to be a darker blue. So go ahead and put this darker blue color into the deeper parts of the ocean, and that way you won't have this very flat single texture for your ocean. So you want to make sure that you do that. Go ahead and paint in the deeper parts, and then I'll take a step back and you can look at it and I'll show you what that painting did, how it helped to create a sense of depth in the map. Okay, there we go. Let's take a step back. Now when I take a step back, you'll notice that the ocean doesn't look flat anymore. It has variety there. So what I'll do next is I'm going to add one more layer. I'm going to add a filter layer. And I'm going to choose blur. Just like that. And now I have this blur filter. Make sure that blur filter is below the terrain and structures. And then this way, now you have this nice blur there. And it kind of looks like it's creating this sense of depth because the thing that's furthest down is blurred and the thing highest up is in focus, and that should help to kind of create this sense of depth and height because of it. So now you can see that. I hope that helps to kind of confirm that sense of depth there. I find that very helpful. Okay, so now that we've done that part, why don't we go in and we're going to throw in maybe some light and shadow into the whole thing. And what we'll do is we're going to choose where the light source is, and then we can determine where the shadows will be. I usually always put them in the same places just for ease, because if you're not very good at shadows, my recommendation is not choosing really weird times of day or odd angles, because shadowing is hard. I am still getting better at shadowing myself. It's actually my biggest weakness. So the great way to give yourself a little less trouble is try not to pick shadows that are, maybe that you don't know exactly how to do, but I'll show you how I put it together and then how I put my shadows and lights. So I'm going to use a light source from Fantasy Battle Maps because I just don't care for the light sources from the watercolor city style. It's just a personal preference. We'll go ahead and pick this light source here, and I'll make sure I'm on my, let's go put it on the structure layer here, and we're going to determine where our light source is first. Let's go ahead and choose normal. That way it's fully bright, and I can kind of see where it is. Is my light source here? Is it over here? Is the sun over here? Is it over here? I'm going to think what I'm going to do is put it in this top corner right here, so that way the shadows will project to that other corner down there. That will make it easier. It won't be too complex. If it's over here, then it might be a little bit harder to determine where the shadow is. So I'll make it kind of easy on myself. You can put the light source wherever you want, but I'll start over here. What I'll do next is I'll add another layer, filter layer, and I'm going to call it it's going to be the night filter. From here, I'll go ahead and change the opacity a little bit. I'd say right about 40 something looks good. I'll right click the night filter and click add mask. Click the mask layer you were just on. Click the white, go fill. Oopsie, my bad. This one right here. Opacity 100%, go fill. And in that way you have that entire filter off. Now switch to white, and now you can paint your filter on top like that. So now we've established where our light source is. We can start painting in our shadows. So we know that the light is right here. So that means you're going to expect shadows all along this edge right here, all along here. You're going to expect some shadows all along this edge here, all along here. This is all going to be shadowed. That's going to be nice. So I have this nice shadow all along here. Same thing. There's going to be a shadow right here. Cast from that. There's going to be a shadow right here. Shadow from the walls. So I'll put a little bit of shadow along this wall here. That looks good. Maybe a little bit of shadow from the dock. So the docks look like they're kind of up higher a little bit. So I'll put a little bit of ambient occlusion there. A little ambient occlusion there. This looks good. Okay, so now we have the shadow there. Why don't we go to this next part? We'll put shadows all along this edge right here. I'll start by just putting the very edge right here. I can paint more later, but I'll put it all along this edge here. All the shadows are going to be there. It's a party. All the shadows will be there. All the most important shadows will be there. Okay? Just to kind of keep that in mind. All right, we'll keep going. I'm just going to try to get this entire edge, wherever the sun is blocked by this island here. So I'll go ahead and put that shadow all along that edge there. I think right about here is probably about right. So right about here looks good. And I'll go ahead and paint in the rest of the shadow here all along here, here. There we go, along that edge. And I'll go up to here and go along this edge. It's because I'll go all the way up to here, all along here. You're kind of getting the idea. Just wherever the light source, you're going to project the shadow away from that light source. So pretty easy stuff, not complex. Remember not to paint the shadow off to the side like this, because it's not attached to the ground, so it's not going to have a drop shadow. We'll have to create some kind of shadow that will be below the island so that way it looks like it's floating. That's going to be important. We'll get to that later. First, we'll deal with just the shadows on the main body of the island first. Then we can move on to the shadows of the projected from the actual island itself onto the ground. We can get to that shortly, but we'll start with this first. See, all along here, we're going to have shadows all along here. Just like this. And I don't recommend doing the cast shadow for the terrain yet. Just paint where the stamps are, where the cliff is first. We'll get into the projection, the cast shadows on the island itself in just a little bit. Also here, we would have a lot of shadow right here, so let's paint that. All right here would be shadow, all makes sense. All of that would have shadow. And then what I would do is I would also throw in just a little bit of ambient occlusion, even along areas where that technically there would be a light there. So I'll bring the opacity down a little bit, and I'll just go and paint a little bit of darker color along this edge at a lower opacity, just so that the island will pop out. So you notice how I'm just putting a lower opacity shadow, even though the light is technically hitting this side of the landmass. Putting a little bit of shadow right there along that edge right there will help to make that pop out a little bit more. So just a little bit of shadow along this edge right here could take you a long way. Very, very helpful. Just kind of keep that in mind. I'll go back to 100% opacity and then kind of make my way. Okay, let's keep going here. I'll zoom in here. Why don't we paint in some important things, like we want to make sure that we get the walls. Those are going to be important, so I'll go ahead and paint a little bit of a wall here. That's where the shadow would be, of course. Same thing here. I want to paint a little bit of shadow along this wall. Don't worry about cast shadows yet. Let's just worry about the most important parts. All along here would be shadow, all along here would be shadow, all along here would be shadow as well. Along this edge here, that makes sense. There would be shadow here. That looks good. Let me see here, a little bit of shadow. Let me just keep looking here. More shadows would be along here, of course. That's where the wall is. We're just going to get with the most important shadows, and then we can really establish, once we've added some shadows, it's easier to establish where the rest of the shadows are, because you have reference. So you'll find that helpful. A little bit here. Shadows in here, here, and a little bit right here, I think should be good. Let me just take a step back and look at it. So far, so good. Let's go ahead and add that little bit of ambient occlusion again by just putting it a little bit along here, this edge. Like I said, I want to create a little bit of depth by putting a little bit of shadow along the base here, just so that that really pops out. That's going to be very helpful. Same thing here. I'll put a little bit of shadow along here, just so that that pops out. There we go. Looks better. There we go. Much, much better. All right, now that we've added all of those shadows, we can go in now and do the cast shadow part. So this right here would have a cast shadow like this that would probably go all the way to here. Let's bring the opacity back up. Undo real quick. It would probably look something like this. The shadow would go all the way to here. My mistake. Shadow would go all the way to probably something like this. We'll create the shape here, get that shadow all the way in. This looks good. The here, that cast shadow looks good. Same thing here. We got to put a little bit of a cast shadow along this edge here. There'd be shadow there. Did I forget to paint shadow along the wall here? I did. Along there as well. Okay, I want to make sure that I got everything. Let me just take a look. Yep. This has a cast shadow of that rock piece. That one does. You take that one does. This one's already showing. I'll paint in the spots I missed a little bit. There we go. All right. Okay. I think for the most part, most of the shadows are done, but you can see now how the shadows really help to add depth to it. I think actually there would be a little bit right here as well. The cast shadow from this part right there. My mistake. Yeah, that looks right. That looks good. Oh, right here as well. A little bit of a cast shadow right here as well from this part. My mistake. Let me see. Does that look right? Dang close. Yeah. Yep, that looks right. Okay, cool. Just want to make sure. There we go. That looks good. And now what's really cool is you can control the opacity of that light filter. So if you don't like how the shadows are kind of cut off a little bit, you can just go back to that night filter and just change the opacity. So you can really get whatever depth that you want. So you really want to show those hard shadows that really show the, have hard contrasts. You can do that. If you don't like the hard contrasts, bring the opacity down. So it's really up to you which one you want to go with. I think just to show depth, I'll make it a little bit darker. I think that'll be helpful. And it will also help me to see any spots that I missed, because it looks like I did. All along here I missed, all along here, a little bit of spot here that I missed, little spot here. Great. That darker change helped me to see some things that I missed. So that's helpful. That looks good. All along here looks good. And here looks good. Okay. What do you all think in the chat? Do you think it looks better with the darker shadows, or does it look better with the lighter shadows? As I said before, I'm a little more privy to the darker ones, but if you like the lighter ones more, we'll stick with that. Let me know in the chat. Darker, Typher, it is your map. I'm sure others will say darker as well, because contrasts are always so jarring. Yes, and Andorlian, absolutely. The darker it is, the more contrast it creates, and therefore it pops out more. So we'll go ahead and bump that up. So now we have some nice contrast there. Let's go ahead and create the ground shadow in which the light source is going to be reflecting a shadow on the ground. Cool trick. We'll go back to terrain. We'll grab the largest island shape. I'm going to copy and paste that whole shape. Now I have that. I'm going to go back to ground layer, copy, paste that. And what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and turn my stroke off. I'm going to choose fill black, or whatever color you want for your shadow. You're going to bring the blur up. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and push the shadow up. There we go. I'll bring the blur all the way up, and I'll bring the opacity down a little bit. And then now all I have to do is just move the shadow right here to like that. And now I have the shadow of the island in the exact same shape as the island itself, because I just stole the terrain shape and just changed the fill and turned off the stroke. See, so now I have a nice island there, and now it looks like it fully looks like it's popping up. So you could put the shadow a little bit over here if you want. I'm going to disconnect it a little bit so that way it's not connected to it, and that way it'll be sure that it's a drop shadow. So I'll push it down maybe right about here. Looks good. I want the shadow to overlap some of the water and some of the ground as well, so that way there's overlap. I'll even maybe rotate the island, rotate the shadow a little bit. There we go. Now we have this nice island right there with that shadow there. The one we're kind of missing is the other one. We could do that too. So why don't we go back to terrain, and I'll go ahead and grab that, copy, paste, go into my recents here. Boom, there it is again. We'll go and bring the opacity down. I'm going to copy that and then go back to ground, paste, and now I have that other island right here, just like that. The other shadow. There you go. Now you really have that sense of depth, don't you? Now it has this sense of depth. So what we'll do is, where are we at, 26? Why don't we do just 2 more quick things before we call it good? Why don't we establish more highlights and a little bit of light on the other side, so that way we can establish or reestablish or further enforce the light and shadow bit. So I'll go back to structures, remove that. what you want to do is just take the line tool, go ahead and choose a color, choose the whatever color the light source is the color you're going to want. So it looks like it's about a yellowish color. So I'll go with that yellowish color. Make sure that blur is on, bring the opacity up. And what I'll do first is I'm just going to go ahead and draw a line first, just like this, so I can kind of see what it looks like. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. I'm really going to bring that blur up, and I'm going to change that blend mode to overlay. There we go. And let's go ahead and bring the opacity down a little bit. There we go. Let's bring that blur all the way up. That looks pretty good. Okay, now I can go ahead and take those lines and just paint a little bit of that yellow line there. That looks a little too, I can't see it as much, so I'll go and bring the opacity up a little bit. There we go. Now I have a nice highlight there. Let's go ahead and do the same thing here. I'll go ahead and paint a highlight along there. That looks good. Another highlight along here. Highlight along here. Let's add a little bit of a highlight along here. Along here. That looks good. There we go. Let me see where else could we add some highlights. All along here, 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 and here. Those are a little too bright. No, I think they're okay. Let's double check. What I'll do is I'll select all the lines. Oops. Here we go. And I'll go and bring the opacity down a little bit. I think I like it right about there. There we go. So now we're reaffirming the light and the shadow. So you're adding the highlights and the shadows as well. That will help to create that sense of depth, right? So what we'll do now is this probably, what we want to do is let's go ahead and add the airships that I made. They're right on this layer right here called airships. There's a bunch of them that I made. I'll go ahead and, my mistake, I'll do that real quick. Go to airships. I'll kind of show you the ones that I made. These were made on another map, but what we'll do is we're going to place all of these airships. We're going to rescale them to fit the right size, and then we're going to go ahead and put them all along the dock. So I'll go ahead and select them all, make sure I get to right about the right scale, and then I'll go ahead and take all of these airships and just put them all along my dock. So one will be right there, one will be right there. Let's go put another one maybe over here on this side, like this. I'll go ahead and put another one, couple over here, one over here like this. Let's go put just a couple just randomly floating around, like maybe one going off screen like that. We'll put a couple over here, like this. Put one over here, over by this dock. All my airships, I'm just going to put them all along as much of the docks as I can. Let's put one right over here. There we go. A couple more. Let's put one there, and then put another one right over here, like, excuse me, right here like this. I think should look good. There we go. All the airships are done. Great. All right. Okay. We could do some variations of it, like an airship is further away or closer up. So if I bring the scale up a little bit, I can have this airship look like it's flying closer to the island, higher up. And then I can take this smaller one right here and bring the scale down and maybe even blur it just a little bit somehow. Like maybe I could move this to layer, ground so that it's blurred. So if I go to ground, I'll have a blurred airship right here like this. So I could do that. It's a little too blurry. You can't really see it, so that might not work. But there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of put it together. Okay. All right. Yep, could take the shadow. Could do that. All these different things that we could do. But since we're short on time, I'm going to go ahead and just move to that next step. We want to continue to affirm the sense of height. So far, I think we've done a good job of showing that this is clearly a floating island because you very clearly have the ground underneath that's blurred, but we can do more things to continue to establish that, right? Because it's a sky island, what are you going to expect in the sky? A lot of clouds, right? Oh, and thank you, by the way, Typher0 for showing that guide. Also, what I should do is I'll include the link to the airships as well in the video description, so that way if you do want to add your own airships to your settlement, your flying island, you totally can. I'll make sure to add that link in the video description on YouTube. Just remember that, okay? So let's use a couple filters to kind of create some cohesion and to create the sense of elevation. I think the first one we'll do is we'll add a color filter of some kind to kind of help us make sure that the whole thing kind of comes together. So I'll go ahead and choose a filter layer. I'm going to choose the red. I'll choose a red color here. Let's go with red sky. There we go. I don't want to have it that much, so I'll bring it down a little bit. I just want to create a little bit of cohesion so that that way there's a little tint of red that'll make sure that all the colors and stamps kind of work together by creating a color on top of that. And then the next step, I'll add another layer. I'm going to go to another filter layer, and let's go to texture filters. We'll go into the catalog here. And what we'll do is we'll go to fantasy world, and there should be a cloudy, like right here, this clouds landscape. This will work quite well because this should frame the whole island while also creating some clouds that give us the sense of height. Now the clouds are all on top of the island, so it kind of shows that the island isn't too far up. So what we want to do now is maybe go and put a little bit of clouds underneath the island so that it shows that it's a high enough elevation where some clouds are beneath the island, but some clouds are also above the island. That should help to continue to establish that sense of height. So I'll type in cloud, and some of these clouds might not work with the clouds of the frame. So what I'll do is I'll go into incarnate, and I'll go and just pick some clouds that I want to use from any style that I think work best. I think this right here, these clouds are probably the closest thing to these right here, but I want to do some changes to them. I'm going to change the blend mode to lighten so I don't have the shadow. Notice how you don't see the shadow anymore of the cloud. I'm also going to desaturate it so it gets that white color. So there's also that next step. I'm also going to blur it because it seems that those are a little blurry. So I'll bring the blur up a little bit, and then I'll also bring the opacity down. Now when I have those clouds, they're very similar to the clouds right there. So what I'll do now is go to my layer called terrain, and I'll go ahead and make sure the clouds are below, and I'll go ahead and just place a little bit of clouds just right under the terrain itself. And then this way, I've established that there's not also clouds above the island or beneath, further creating that sense of hierarchy that you want to give it that sense that is high up in the air. So now we have clouds above and below, helping to establish that, hey, they're not so far high up to where all the clouds are beneath them, but they're also not so far below that there's no clouds beneath it. Again, kind of helps to create this nice sense of depth to it. No, it doesn't. Clouds is an exception to the lighten rule because it's still going to interact with a stamp behind it. So if you were to make a tower on the lighten blend mode, it will still interact with the textures and the stamps beneath it. So it won't work. Clouds work because it's just a cloud, and when they stack on top of each other in the lighten blend mode, they're not contradicting each other because it's the same thing. But if you were to put a tower on top of maybe a texture that had some artifacts on it, unfortunately, the artifacts of the texture will show beneath the actual lightened, the lightened stamp. So unfortunately, no, it won't work. There are techniques that you could to make it work by putting some kind of shape behind the stamp, but that would be a lot of work, and I don't recommend that. All right, I think we have reached near the very, very end of this. I'm going to go just take a step back and look at it real quick and just see if there's anything else that I wanted to add. I think there is only one more thing that I wanted to add. That was the crystal thing. And we want to add maybe some special light sources to make the map a little bit more interesting. So why don't we add just a couple more little details to the map to make it interesting. I said 2 hours, I spent an hour 36. So let's just add in some last final details here. We'll go back to structures, and might even be able to put it on terrain. Let's put it on structures. Let's go back to dwarven. And what I want to do is maybe add in what might be kind of cool is to throw in these blue crystals right here. I think they're crystals. Is that what these are? Blue giant. These are a cave plant. They're not crystals. These could be crystals. Why don't we use these blue kind of luminescent plants? I kind of like these. These are kind of cool looking. Maybe these are important to an ingredient to making the planet float or whatnot, but it will also break up the warmness. Notice how there's a lot of warm on this island here. By throwing in just this random blue, this cooler color, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of create some interesting contrast between warms and cools. So I'll kind of place these, a couple of these. Let me make sure I got the right layer correct. There we go. That looks good. I'll go ahead and place a couple all along here like this, along here. And I'll also go down a layer and make sure that they're also beneath as well. And don't forget to bring the scale down. So have some that are big, some that are small, because that is how nature works. Nature favors variety and diversity. So have different sizes of these stamps. Don't all have them be exactly at 100% or 20%. Have them stagger those differences, 35, 40, 50, whatever it might be, because that really is what you see a lot in nature, is this variety thing. Helps with survival. Very, very important. Why don't we go ahead also make these, because they're bioluminescent, we have a couple options. We can just use light sources and put them on top of here, or we can just select all from the set and just use a shadow. It's up to you which one works best. Why don't we use a shadow? I'll go to custom object shadow. We'll choose a bluish color that works well. And I'll go ahead and really, really push the blur way, way out like this. Bring that intensity up. Why don't we go with a lighter blue? That will work a little better. A little bit lighter. There we go. And now we have those blue crystals, or those blue plants kind of popping out a little bit more. I think that looks nice. I might want to even consider adding a light source as well, because I think I really want to show the bioluminescence of it. So I'll go to hue, change it to that blue color, overlay, and then just I'll put one light there, 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 some there, and then we'll put a little bit in here as well. There we go. Now we'll really get these to kind of like pop out a little bit. There we go. It's amazing what light and shadow can do to a map, right? It really, really causes it to pop out. So I think overall, that part looks good. Why don't we also add in just a couple more details? I want to keep using stamps from the Dwarven set. So why don't we just use a couple more things just to add some details for fun? For instance, why don't we use some of these mushrooms? They're supposed to be mushrooms, but why don't we use them as domes for the roofs of these towers? I think that would be a nice touch. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and just place these right here. I'll make sure to turn the rotation on, and I'll just go ahead and place these right on top of this one right here like this. This will help distinguish this layer from the other one. So now I have these nice little orange domes on top of my towers. I think that's a nice touch. I'll do the same thing here. I'll add a couple of these mushrooms. Again, they're not really domes, they're mushrooms, but I think it just adds a little bit extra to it. Remember, the great thing about Incarnate is that you don't have to use every stamp what it's originally designed for. You could use it for whatever the heck you want. You want to use mushrooms for a dome, go for it. You totally can. It actually makes it a little bit more fun when you go out of the box like that. There you go. See what those domes did? That really kind of helped add a little bit more. Added a nice shiny dome on the top there. Add a little extra detail. A nice touch. Okay, well, I think, let me see, 440. I think that's good. I don't think we really need to do more here, but I think you guys get the general idea on how to put the floating island, how to create realistic or more natural looking terrain. And then we talked about how to quarantine each section by creating these walls. Notice how every section on every tier of the island has these defensive walls here. Each section has a different utility or purpose. This bottom layer is where the mining is and where the slums is. This next one is where most of the infrastructure is. This one also has infrastructure and housing, and then this very top part right here. I think the only other thing that I can think of that we could probably do is just add the shadows. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to go ahead and say all stamps. I'm going to go across like this, and now I can select all of my stamps. I'm going to go custom object shadow. I'm going to undo that real quick. What I'll do quickly is I'm going to select all of these. Select all from the set and lock those. Those don't need a shadow. There we go. And then I'll go over, select all here, shadow, custom object shadow. We'll go into our editing here. And I'll go ahead and make sure that there are these nice, intense shadows. And then what I'll do is, because the shadows are projecting from the bottom, from the top left to the bottom right, all I have to do is just do some custom object adjustments. I'll go ahead and move it a little bit, a little offset a little bit that way. And then I'll offset a little bit that way. So that way it goes, projects right. We could probably bring the intensity down a little bit, maybe move the offset just a little bit more. There we go. There you go. And now you can see now the buildings from the build are popping out because it has that hard shadow there projecting. So each building pops out. And so I think that's it. Everything kind of comes together. I can make this map clonable. I'll go ahead and save it. When I go to post this online on YouTube, either today or tomorrow, I'll go ahead and put the link to this map in the video description. So if you want to use it, you totally can. Maybe there's adjustments and things that you want made, or there was a suggestion that you had in the chat that got missed. You'll be able to go ahead and use that, okay?